Hey everyone, and welcome to Omni Podcast's ELI5 episode all about Torus, a new decentralized blockchain protocol that's been making waves. I'm your host, Craig, and with me as always is Tara, our blockchain expert.
Hi everyone, happy to be here.
So Tara, for those of our listeners who might not be familiar with Torus, can you give us a little background on what it is and why it's generating so much buzz?
Sure thing. Torus is a really fascinating case because it's actually built on the work of some pretty groundbreaking predecessors. Have you heard of BitTensor and Commune AI?
Yeah, definitely. I've heard those names thrown around. What's the connection to Torus?
Well, BitTensor was really the pioneer, laying the groundwork for decentralized AI.
Yeah.
Then along came Commune AI, which built on those concepts with the goal of creating a platform for independent projects.
So where does Torus fit into all of this?
Torus is actually a fork of Commune AI, spearheaded by Ren Labs. Initially, they wanted to improve Commune AI, but ultimately they had a different vision for the project, both philosophically and architecturally.
So what were those key differences that led to this fork?
Well, one of the biggest differences is Torus's focus on stake-anchored alignment. Commune AI was more about providing a space for individual projects to operate independently. But Torus uses staking to incentivize all participants to work towards the goals of the network as a whole.
Okay, that sounds like a pretty big shift. Can you maybe elaborate on how stake-anchored alignment actually works in practice?
Absolutely. So essentially it means that the more you stake in the network, the more influence you have over its direction. This encourages participants to act in the best interests of the network as their success is tied to the overall success of Torus. It's a way to create a more unified system.
So like aligning everyone's incentives.
Exactly. And to do this, the team behind Torus completely rebuilt the architecture from scratch, focusing on scalability and modularity.
Wow, rebuild from the ground up. That's a bold move.
Yeah.
What were the issues with the original Commune AI architecture that they were trying to solve?
Well, the original blockchain had some limitations in terms of growth and adaptability. It wasn't really built to handle the kind of complexity that a truly decentralized and self-organizing system needs. Torus, on the other hand, is designed to be much more flexible and scalable, able to handle a lot more users and applications.
So it sounds like they future-proofed it, allowing it to adapt as the network grows.
Yeah, exactly. And a key part of that adaptability is this thing they call recursive delegation.
Okay, now that sounds pretty complicated. Can you break that down for us? What is recursive delegation, and why is it so important for Torus?
Think of it like a way to spread out permissions and responsibilities throughout the network. It allows for really granular control over who can do what, creating a system of checks and balances that prevents any single entity from gaining too much power.
So a built-in defense against centralization.
Exactly. And this actually ties directly into the tokenomics and governance of Torus.
I remember reading about the migration process from Commune AI. Can you remind us how that worked?
Sure. So they basically set up a bridge that allowed holders of Com AI tokens to swap them for Torus tokens at a 1-to-1 ratio. But importantly, this bridge is closed now.
Okay, so stakeholders have a direct say in how the network evolves. Things like emissions rates, staking rewards, and even future upgrades to the protocol itself.
You got it. It gives the community a lot of power.
This is fascinating, but we've talked a lot about this new architecture and stake-anchored alignment and recursive delegation. But how does this translate into real-world applications? What can Torus actually do that other blockchain protocols can't?
That's a great question. And to really understand that, we have to dig into the concept of multi-scale competency, which is a core part of what makes Torus so unique.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more. What is multi-scale competency and how does it set Torus apart?
Okay, so imagine a system that operates efficiently at both micro and macro levels. At the micro level, you've got individual agents like nodes, validators, and users making decisions based on their own information and incentives.
So a lot of activity happening all at the same time.
Yes, but here's the really cool part. At the macro level, those independent actions are all guided by the overall goals of the network, the ones set by the stake-anchored alignment mechanism.
So it's almost like each individual is playing their own part, but they are all working together towards a larger goal.
That's a perfect analogy. And this ability to balance local decision-making with global alignment gives Torus its adaptability.
Gotcha. So if we compare this to the original Commune AI, what would be the main difference in functionality?
Well, Commune AI was more about fostering independent development. It was like giving everyone tools and letting them build their own thing. Torus is more about creating an interconnected ecosystem. It's about enabling interactions between different parts of the network, leading to emergent behavior that's bigger than any one part on its own.
Now that's where it gets really interesting. Can you give a concrete example of how this emergent behavior might play out in the Torus network?
Well, it's still early days, but think about a decentralized application that suddenly needs to scale up to meet a surge in demand. In a traditional blockchain, that can cause problems like congestion and slow transaction times.
Right, because of limited resources.
Exactly. But with Torus, the network can dynamically allocate resources where they're needed most. Nodes can prioritize certain transactions, validators can adjust their behavior, and the system adapts to maintain stability.
That's pretty amazing. So the network is sort of reacting on its own without anyone telling it what to do?
That's the whole idea. It's a very different approach from traditional blockchains.
It sounds incredibly powerful, but I can imagine it's really challenging to actually implement.
Oh, absolutely. It's a lot harder to actually make it work in the real world than just design it on paper.
Speaking of the real world, Torus V0 launched just this month on January 3rd. What are the key features of this initial release?
Yeah, Zero was all about laying the foundation, getting those basic subnet operations up and running. They implemented the core staking and mining mechanisms, and of course, a big focus was on building the community around the project.
So the groundwork for future development.
Exactly. And speaking of future development, the full version of Torus is still under construction. They're aiming to unlock even more advanced features. Things like sophisticated incentive programming that can really fine-tune how the network behaves, and of course, further development of its autonomous adaptation capabilities.
Wow, that sounds really ambitious.
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges you think Torus might face as they move towards this full version?
Well, one of the biggest hurdles will be proving that these theoretical principles of self-organization actually work when the network gets really complex.
It's easy to design it on paper, but making it work in the wild is a whole other story, right?
Exactly. And of course, there's the human element too. Torus is designed to be decentralized, meaning control is distributed amongst many participants. Fostering a community that understands and embraces decentralization is crucial for long-term success.
It's not just about building the tech, it's about building the culture around it.
Absolutely. And that takes education, engagement, and a shared belief in the power of these decentralized systems.
It's fascinating, almost like a social experiment.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it raises all sorts of interesting questions. How do you ensure fairness and equity in a decentralized system? How do you prevent bad actors from taking over? These are all things the Torus community will need to address as the network develops.
Really important questions. Before we wrap up, I want to touch on something you mentioned earlier about sustainability.
Yeah.
How does Torus plan to remain viable long term?
Well, they started with very low emissions to combat inflation. And the protocol has the power to adjust those emissions over time based on what the network needs.
So it's about balancing inflation control with incentives for participation.
Exactly. A challenge for sure, but one that the Torus team seems to be thinking about very carefully. And of course, the success of any blockchain project really comes down to the strength of its community.
Well, Tara, this has been an incredible conversation. I've learned so much about Torus, and I'm even more excited about its potential now.
Me too. It's definitely a project to watch.
Absolutely. And to all our listeners out there, I encourage you to explore the world of Torus. Check out their website, join their community, and be a part of this journey into the future of decentralization. Thanks for joining us on this ELI5 deep dive into Torus. We hope you found it insightful. Remember, the future of blockchain is still unfolding, so stay curious, stay engaged, and keep exploring what's possible. Until next time.
Here at Omni Labs, we provide AI, crypto news, tutorials, podcasts, and guides for free. Please help us to keep helping you by subscribing to our channel. Thanks for watching. See you next time.